Hi there, and thank you for selecting this video. I'm Dr. Erdem, and today I want to go over the 6 TOK essay questions for May 2026. We'll briefly look at each of the questions, examine a few key terms and implications, and consider any assumptions that might be present. I'll start by displaying the 6 questions and give you a moment to read them. Feel free to pause the video if you'd like more time to look them over. Okay, let's discuss the questions one by one. When looking at this question, it's pretty clear why the natural sciences were chosen as the first AOK. Here, they are asking you to think carefully about empiricism and the role it plays in the production of knowledge. However, the other key element of the question is, does it matter? Clearly, the IB wants you to think about the nature of flaws with observations and come to a conclusion regarding their significance. In terms of other AOKs, you might consider the role observation has on the human sciences or history. For the former, you might want to discuss the limitations of observation in regards to the human subject, that what is seen on the outside might not be the same thing going on in one's mind. In regards to the latter, you might think about whether observations made today about historical events, even those that have been observed, might not be the whole truth. Remember to think of why that might be, and if it's important, or does it matter in the grand scheme of things? Is observation just too important to the production of knowledge, and does it not matter that it is flawed? Now we have a to what extent question. Think of approaching such questions like a 1 to 10 number scale, with 1 meaning to no extent and 10 meaning to a complete extent. Your answer to this question should ideally address a range of points along this scale. Please remember this when I talk about questions 5 and 6 as well. The essence of this question lies in the notion of doubt. It is asking about skepticism and to what degree is skepticism essential to the pursuit of knowledge. The IB has allowed you to choose any of the AOKs in order to approach this question, and it's easy to see why. In a world where seemingly so much knowledge has already been pursued, it's often difficult to come up with something completely original. Instead, what factors into our pursuit is the need to doubt things that have already been found to be true. For instance, much of what we know in the natural sciences seem to be concrete and fact. However, many scientists from the 1800s would have said the same about what they knew. Indeed, mathematics, built on seemingly certain grounds, only has to encounter a single counterexample or change in axiom for the entire principle to be reconsidered. However, you might also want to talk about the dangers of being too skeptical. After all, if we doubt everything, then what do we actually know? Is questions can be first broken down into a simple answer. Yes, no, maybe, sometimes. Such an oversimplification can provide a foothold for you to begin a more nuanced discussion on the topic. Here, the key to understanding the question relies on the notion of conveyance. In other words, it is about communication. I believe that mathematics was chosen because it's probably the AOK that is least reliant on having its knowledge conveyed in an elaborate form. Of course, you might like to think about the difference between the way something like y equals 2x plus 1 can be shown as an equation, and also here as a line graph. In many ways, art becomes the inverse of mathematics, as there is an assumption that the way knowledge is conveyed, the medium and method, is more significant than the power of the knowledge itself. Indeed, some artworks might hold significant knowledge, yet because of the way they are conveyed, they might feel somewhat underwhelming at first thought. René Magritte's painting, The Treachery of Images, comes to mind. This question stands out because of its use of we. The significance of context within the question leads to assumptions regarding certain AOKs. As such, it might be merited to approach this question from a somewhat personal perspective. As an IB student, you're exactly the kind of knowledge-acquiring we the question is talking about. For instance, the firm belief that knowledge in history or art can only be understood if we have a firm grasp of the context surrounding them. Or the inverse, that knowledge from mathematics and natural sciences should be completely removed from context, and it's their universality that gives them power. However, a small amount of research into this area will quickly show that such assumptions are far too simplistic to actually reflect how knowledge works in the real world. It is interesting that the IBDP chose the arts and the human sciences for this AOK, considering that Pythagoras is best known as a mathematical mind, since you probably encountered his Pythagorean theorem in school many moons ago. However, Pythagoras was a polymath whose areas of interest expanded far beyond mathematics. Thus, when we think about the claim made in the question, we're really thinking about it from a viewpoint of simplification or reductionism. Are we basically able to break down the greatest artworks and the most fascinating discovery regarding the human condition into simplistic facts and figures? Indeed, I believe that the reason behind the choice of the arts and the human sciences for this question comes down to the nature of human beings, how we behave, interact, emote, think, and whether all of our elements can be expressed in simple numbers. The final question asks us to think about interpretation as a tool, a method that will allow us to produce knowledge. Of course, when we think about interpretation, the first thing that comes to mind is the notion of subjectivity versus objectivity. I believe that is why the IB has decided to link this AOK with the question, as history is built upon evidence and the interpretation of a historian, with all the fallibilities of a human being baked in. To counterbalance history, you might want to think about your other AOK being something less seemingly interpretational. Yet, if you do your research, you will soon find that it's often difficult to escape interpretation as a tool in the creation of knowledge, no matter what the AOK. And there you have it. I hope this overview of the 6 questions have been insightful and helps you build a strong foundation for your TOK essay this year. If you'd like to learn more about the TOK essay or receive personalized tutoring in TOK or other IB subjects, please don't hesitate to email CANA@canaelite.com. Happy learning!